Throughout the ages, history has been altered by word of mouth and the misrepresentation of those who might not have been present when some of the world's most significant events took place. Channelers Barry and Connie Strohm bring through the spirits of those who actually witnessed or took part in these historical events and lets them tell their stories in their own words. Welcome to Channeling History. And now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Channeling History. We're the only show where we speak to the souls that made things happen, and I guarantee you the souls we speak to tonight are going to catch you by surprise. I'm Barry Strohm, your host, and I'll be doing the channeling.
And I'm Connie Strohm, your co-host, and I'd like to also welcome you to our show. Last week, we channeled 4 members of the military that received the Medal of Honor who fought in 4 different wars: World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and fighting in Iraq. This is a wonderful show, and the names of the individuals awarded these medals should be long remembered. They were just wonderful, brave souls that loved their country. This show, as well as all of our shows, is available on our YouTube channel. It's in the name of Barry Strohm and has over 600 videos. We're currently consolidating all of our audio broadcasts on a new platform named podbean.com. So just go to the site and search Barry Strohm.
Okay, I would like to take a minute and remind our listeners we also bring you 3 additional podcasts throughout each week. On Wednesday mornings, we channel a weekly message from Jesus. On Sundays, we do a Sunday sermon. And on Friday evenings, our newest show, Hello Heaven. All of our shows are available on our YouTube channel and the most popular other audio platforms. All of our shows are intended to help you better understand the afterlife, heaven, all of the things that go on once you pass, your eternal life, your soul. A lot of information on our different shows, and we have over 600 videos on the YouTube channel that we've done in the past. So tonight, we are going to discuss the reasons for and the possible cures for the hatred in the Middle East. We're going to use a roundtable format with 3 famous souls involved with bringing the Israelites to the Middle East. We're going to speak with some amazing souls tonight. We're going to speak to the leader of the Israelites. We'll speak to an ancient governor of the Israelites before Christ. And then we're going to switch and we're going to speak to the leader of the Palestinians that wanted to destroy the Jewish population in modern times.
Keep in mind, there's no time on the other side, so the souls in heaven can comment on ancient as well as current events. We're going to interview Moses, King David, and Yasser Arafat. It's going to be one of our more unique programs. So please feel free to submit any questions through the chat room.
Just tell us what it sound. Okay, we're going to give a short disclaimer. There will be a wide variety of opinions tonight. The opinions or statements voiced on our show are the channeled words of the spirits and do not necessarily reflect our opinions, those of the ParaX Network, or of our sponsors. Now, before we channel, we always say a prayer of protection. Connie will say the prayer, and we will begin to channel with the spirit guests that we have tonight.
God, please grant us your wisdom and protection. Grant us the knowledge that we can handle and keep us safe from all things that will harm us. Keep the messages positive and pure love. Keep us safe from our egos. We ask these things in the light of the seen, the unseen, and the honesty of God. Amen.
Okay, so we're going to start our channeling tonight. We'll be speaking with Moses, then we'll speak with King David, and then we're going to speak with Yasser Arafat. Now, Moses was born in Egypt. The date of his birth is unknown, but estimated to be around the 13th century BC. The Israelites were an enslaved minority, increasing in population, and they were thought to be a threat to the Egyptian Pharaoh. Moses led the exodus of the Israelites out of Egypt to the Promised Land, which is now Judea. Along the way, he received the Ten Commandments from God.
King David. He was a Jewish monarch of ancient Israel and the third king in the United Kingdom of Israel. He was born in 1040 BC and died in 970 BC. He's best known for the killing of Goliath, the Philistine. It is said that David ruled Israel for 40 years.
Now, Yasser Arafat was born in 1920 and died in 2004. He was an Egyptian-born Palestinian leader. He was chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization from 1969 to 2004. Ideologically, he was an Arab nationalist and a socialist. He was a founding member of the Fatah political party, which he led from 1959 until 2004. Fatah was a paramilitary organization which sought Israel's replacement with a Palestinian state. So it's going to be very, very interesting to get all of these three opinions tonight. And as I say, we're going to use a roundtable format. So Connie, let's begin with our first question.
Okay, welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Would each of you like to begin with a statement? Let's begin with Moses.
Yes, I would like to thank you for allowing me to return once again. Much has obviously changed since I brought the Israelites or the Jewish people to what was the promised land for us. We were persecuted in Egypt, and we had no other choice but to leave and to find another country. Much has changed, obviously, through the thousands of years since we established our roots in that country. Sadly, it has been a long history of disagreements, wars. Today is probably the worst that we have seen among the hatreds. I'm hoping that maybe someone will listen to our suggestions tonight, and maybe someone will pay attention. But I thank you for listening, and I look forward to being able to answer your questions. Mr. Arafat, what is taking place in the Middle East today is not beneficial for anyone. I fought for the independence of the Palestinians. I thought that we deserved to have our own state. I thought that we had been mistreated by the Israelis. I felt that the United Nations should have given us a country as well when they formed a country of Israel. I felt that we were the ones that were truly penalized so that Israel could have a state. But that has been many years ago. And as I watch from over on this side, I understand that what is taking place could actually lead to a world war if it's not taken care of. I thank you for this opportunity. It was certainly not expected. So I hope that I will be able to answer truthfully. Now that I'm over here, I must admit that some of my ideas have changed. King David. I governed the Israelis, the Israelites, for many years before Christ was ever born. In those days, all we seemed to do was have fights, arguments, wars. Even then, people resented our existence. It seems as though hatred is much stronger than love, especially in that area of the world. Through the thousands of years since I actively governed, as Moses said, many things have changed, but many things have also remained the same. There are hatreds, there are wars, there are disagreements. There is apparently no way that the parties can ever agree. Maybe through discussion, negotiation, understanding of the one God's words, that things can change. So thank you also for allowing me to return to your show tonight.
Gentlemen, I'm very curious to know, what is it like when souls representing such differences and opposing ideas are brought together in heaven?
There is no hatred in heaven. This is Moses speaking. There is no hatred in heaven. When I first arrived, I was greeted and I was thanked for what I did in leading the Israelites to a land where they could exist. There is truly no evil over here. When truly evil people arrive, they are taken to a lower level, and we do not have to meet with them should we not agree and should we not want to do it. Souls, when they arrive in heaven, change their opinion. Everyone, once they are over here, understands truly the big picture. When you're living your human life, you only understand one set of circumstances. You do not truly understand what is God's will. I have no animosities towards Mr. Arafat. I watched as he was trying to create his own country, and I watched as he was trying to destroy Israel. I did not approve of what he was doing, but I understood that he had a different viewpoint and was trying as best he could to succeed in securing a future for his fellow Palestinians. So I have absolutely no animosity towards him, and we all understand that we must coexist on this side. Mr. Arafat. I had much hatred in my heart for the Jewish people. I admit it, and I thought that the Jewish people were taking great advantages of the Palestinians, and I wanted my people to have their own country and to be free. When I arrived over here, I was greeted with only love. I understood that human emotions and soul emotions are two entirely different things. I do not feel animosity towards the Jewish people since I am over here. I understand that the Palestinians have done things to create much hatred among the Jewish people. I also know that the Jewish people have done many things to create hatreds among the Palestinians. This has been going on for thousands of years. And even though I bear no hatreds over here, I still have desires that the Palestinians would be able to find peace in their own country. But all of the souls, the three of us here tonight, we all understand that God wants us to coexist, and that even though we have different understandings of what should be taking place back on the planet Earth, we know that we must not show hatreds and that we must be civil when in heaven. David. When I came over, I had much resentments towards the people that had tried to destroy us. I understood right away that I must put those emotions away, that they are not what God wants, and that should I choose to reincarnate and return, that I must not enter my life with any type of hatred. When we are on this side, we all get together. We understand each other, and we do not show any hatreds. Evil truly does not exist over here. The evil are placed in an area of heaven of their own, where they must contemplate their futures. But I can honestly say that the three of us bear no resentment.
In ancient times, when the Israelites arrived in Judea, how were they greeted by the residents?
Moses. When we arrived in Judea, we were resented. We were a large group of individuals, and we needed to be able to establish settlements. We needed to be able to raise crops. We needed to be able to trade. We tried as best we can not to offend the local residents. But we had to negotiate areas where we could live. We had to trade. We had things that we brought with us that we could use to barter. We needed to rely on the residents for food because we had not brought much with us. We were not, shall we say, welcomed with open arms, but we were not totally resented. We tried to do the best we could to maintain friendly relationships, but obviously it did not work in many instances. We found ourselves being faced with the possibility and realities of wars. It was a very difficult situation, Mr. Arafat. I obviously was not in human form at that time, but my soul watched from the other side. And I felt that the Jewish people needed to get out of Egypt. They needed to find a homeland where they could live in peace or attempt to live in peace. They went into areas that were not densely populated. So the local tribes did resent the fact that they were having to establish settlements. Many of the tribes in the area were nomadic at the time and traveled from place to place. Some of the tribes did not live in villages, so it was relatively easy for them to avoid the newcomers. Many of them were very, very different from the Israelites that were arriving. And in those days, they worshiped different gods than the Israelites. So it was inevitable that there would be conflicts, and sadly they did occur. David. I ruled after the Israelites had gained basic powers, had settled in communities, and were actually quite powerful. The neighboring tribes resented the fact that we were gaining power and that we were controlling larger areas of what is now referred to as Judea. It was, as I look back, a situation that was incredibly difficult for both sides. The Israelites needed a place to live, and the Arabic tribes resented the fact that they were giving their land. They were two vastly different cultures.
When the Israelites arrived in the Levant, They were essentially refugees arriving in a new country with no property ownership. How did they acquire the land for their homes and farming? And did this contribute to this long-term animosities?
Moses. We bartered for lands, we traded for them, and there were lands that were basically uninhabited. We needed to be in areas where there was water. We needed to be in lands where there was fertile ground to grow our crops. We needed to be able to prosper. And the tribes in the area had the same desires. They had lived there before us, and they, in many instances, resented the fact that we were taking over lands that they had formerly resided upon. We tried to barter, to negotiate the lands, but in certain instances, our settlers just did simply take over and create resentments from the previous residents. Arafat. It is a fact that when foreign individuals come to any country, they are resented by the residents that are living in that area. That has not changed today. You are seeing that Palestinian immigrants are resented even in Arab countries. It is very difficult for different cultures to assimilate. It takes much time for that to happen. And they must want the assimilation to take place. We see today that many immigrants from foreign countries do not want to assimilate, but to remain strong in their own cultures. And this is very dangerous and causes much resentment among the residents that are allowing the immigrants to come. David. Immigrants have been resented throughout time. They represent different cultures than what the residents of the country. In cases where there are similar cultures that are immigrating, they are accepted much more readily. In the Middle East, the Arab and Israeli cultures have remained very dissimilar. Arabs will generally pursue the Islamic faith, and the Israelis generally pursue the Jewish faith. While each are ancient faiths, they are very, very different. There are many that interpret the faith of Islam as being the only faith, and they have great resentment for outsiders. This caused problems and wars in the ancient times, just as it creates problems in modern times.
The Israelites and the Philistines did not exactly get along. Do you think the Philistines were ancient ancestors of the Palestinians? And would that give the current Palestinians the ancient rights to Judea?
It is Moses. It is quite possible that the Philistines have ancient relationships with the current Palestinian culture. But thousands of years have created many, many changes in ownership of properties, and in the ways that interrelationships have taken place. The Philistines ceased to exist, and different Arab tribes and communities became subservient to the Roman culture, as well as Jewish and Christian religions became subservient to the Romans. There have been many, many transitions through the years. Arafat. I think what is important is the fact that Arabic cultures have remained in the area of Judea for the thousands of years. They were in Judea long before the Israelites arrived, and they are still there today. They are two different cultures, and it is very difficult for such cultural differences to be reconciled. David. As I ruled, we fought many wars. I think that one of the greatest reasons for conflict are the extreme cultural differences between the Arabic cultures and the Israeli culture. The Arabs did not begin to adapt to the Islamic religious faith until the 7th and 6th century. So you cannot blame that type of religious difference on the early conflicts. It was almost 1,500 years from the time that Moses arrived and the time that Muhammad created the Islamic faith. I think that after the creation of Islam, things degenerated and the animosities grew in the Middle East.
Yeah, why do you think there is such a long history of animosity between the members of the Arab community and the members of the Jewish community? It is long.
Moses. The cultural differences between Arabic culture and Jewish culture is quite extreme. The Arabs traded, many were nomadic, many of them did live in communities, and they adopted the Islamic faith. The Jewish people were traders. They basically settled in communities. They tried to build armored cities to protect themselves, but they have remained fairly consistent in their cultural beliefs and religion. I think it is the extremes between the two cultures that have contributed to the animosities. Arafat. I think that I agree with that analysis. There are truly huge differences between the Islamic faith and the Jewish faith. I would also point out there are extreme differences within the Jewish faith itself. There are the Hasidic Jews, there are more liberal, progressive members, and the Jewish faith, the members of the Jewish culture have always been the individuals that were the bankers. Many of them controlled the money supply. Whenever there are financial problems, the money changers or money holders are often the ones that are the most hated. Arafat. It is true that the members of the Jewish faith often were the money changers and often controlled great amounts of the trade and the pricing that took place. The Arabs were very good traders themselves, but they tended to be more spread out in their communities. As was mentioned before, they were more mobile in their lives. But there was indeed, and always has been, the incredibly different attitudes between the two cultures. David. We always opted for strong communities. We tried to defend those communities. And we tried to be self-sufficient. We welcomed trade with outside cultures. But we were often resented because of the way economic trade was conducted throughout the ages. Those that control the financing are often very much disliked. The Jewish community has been noted to be very shrewd traders. And I think that simply added to the animosities.
When we channeled the Prophet Muhammad, he spoke of the cooperation he had with members of the Christian faith. Yet today, many Muslims speak of death to Christians. What happened through the years?
Moses. We watched very carefully as the Prophet Muhammad walked the earth and created the religion that today is known as Islam. At the time, he was doing God's work. He was creating a religion of a single God that was adapted to the area. The concept of a single religion at that time brought many of the nomadic tribes together and created a sense of unity, a sense of nation. The words of the prophet were in some instances not recorded correctly, but the religion that he formed was one of love and one of unity. Arafat. Our religion feels that the Quran states the exact words of the prophet. The prophet, when he walked the earth, was facing many difficulties. And he made many commands that were often quite violent in order to save the unity that he was trying to build. Things have obviously changed greatly, and there are many members of the Islamic faith that still use the very conservative and, in some instances, violent interpretations of the Quran. Many of the individuals that are leading the Arab world today take advantage of the very conservative interpretations. And that has created the attitude that many today resent the very conservative interpretations, and they are quite violent. And as I watch from over here, I do understand how those interpretations are having a very, very negative effect on how people view a wonderful religion. David. Keep in mind that when I ruled the Jewish empire, that we were waiting for the Messiah to return. When Jesus came, we thought he was a prophet. So many of our beliefs are very contrary to the Christian faith, which base their belief on the fact that Jesus was either God himself or the Son of God. So the Jewish faith is basically a standalone type of faith. It differs greatly from Islam, from Hindu, and even in many instances from Christianity. That has helped lead to some of the animosities that the Jewish population has faced.
Mr. Arafat, one of our listeners would like to know, how did you die? Were you murdered or were you poisoned?
I was not murdered. My health was very bad, and I simply passed of natural causes.
Okay. What effect did World War II have on the relationship of Palestinians and Jews?
World War II, this is Moses. World War II took the lives of millions of our people. The Germans were committed to the ultimate extinction of Jewish life in Europe, and had they won the war, it would have been throughout the world. It was a time where there were great sympathies in the other countries that had fought against Germany. And those countries felt that it was time that a country was established where the Jewish people could live safely and prosper. The Arab community immediately resented that, but that was the attitude following the Second World War. Arafat. It should also be noted that many of the Arabic people suffered greatly from the Germans as well. There was a great belief that creating a Jewish country and not a parallel country for the Palestinian people was a great affront to the Arabic world. The Jewish people were faced with immediate wars, but the Arabic community felt great resentment that Israel was given a defined country and it was taken out of lands that were traditionally Arab. David, it is very true that the country that was defined as Israel was the ancient lands that were resided by both civilizations and cultures. I do believe that if a land for the Palestinians had been defined at that time, that the chances for the Palestinians and Israelis would have been greatly enhanced to live in peace.
Okay, yeah, many politicians today do speak of a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine. What is each of your opinions of a two-state solution? I think we just heard one.
Moses. The idea of a two-state situation would create even greater animosities at this time. There have been attempts in the past to give Palestinians greater independence, and they have taken that opportunity to allow organizations of hatred such as Hamas to take over and control the areas. The great question of a two-state solution is, will the Palestinians truly rule themselves, or will they once again be taken over by a country such as Iran and be led by people of true hatred? It is an incredibly difficult situation at this time. I do feel there will be a time that the Palestinians will be given an independent state. I think the question is more when than if. Arafat. When I lived, I must admit that I helped bring violence to the Palestinian state. I wanted the Palestinian or Arab community to be powerful and to be able to totally control their own destiny. I underestimated the interdependence that the Palestinians would have upon Israel for economics, for trade, for employment. I truly believe that the Palestinians will not find peace until they have their independent state. That opinion has not changed since I walked the earth, and I do not see anything currently that would change my mind. I do question whether they are powerful enough to maintain independent control in some type of a democratic situation. But it is possible, David. I do not think that the current approach will make it possible for the Palestinians to have a state independent in the near future. As I watch from over here, I feel that the presence of Iran will make it impossible for the Palestinians at this time to remain independent. What is necessary is a situation where Palestinians and Israelis cooperate economically, and that the Israelis help to establish an independent state at some time in the future. But they can only do it when the people of Palestine are able to maintain their independence. In the current state, the economy of Palestine is ruined because of this current war. It is possible that through wise management and rebuilding, that the Palestinians can gain a financial independence, and when they are financially and militarily independent, they will be able to maintain their independence, and that will be the time that they will be able to prosper as an independent state.
So do you think that with the current hatred of the Palestinians and the Jews, that a separate Palestinian nation actually could be formed that would not be an enemy of Israel?
Moses. As I watch, I do not believe that that can take place at this time. I think that external political pressures would make it impossible for the Palestinians to maintain the independence that they would need in order to live peacefully with Israel, Arafat. I believe that it is possible that they can currently become independent given their own state. It will take financial aid from the world, and it will take a restructuring of the educational system. It will take UN peacekeepers to maintain their independence and to assure that terrorist type organizations that have only hatred for their neighbor are allowed to take over. But I think if the world is willing to give the peacekeepers required to allow the Palestinians to rebuild and to live in peace, that it is possible. David. It is, in my mind, not possible at this time. The strength of Iran is indisputable. They have just attacked Israel, and at the current time, Hamas still has quite a bit of military strength. Israel is surrounded by enemies. I think there will be a time, inevitably in the future, where the Palestinians will be given a state of independence. I would point out that it will take worldwide assistance. Palestine will have to be rebuilt. There must be some way to reduce the density of population in the area currently known as Palestine. The other Arab states will have to cooperate and allow certain members of the Palestinian state to live in their countries. In my mind, the population is just simply too great in that area, and that proper housing, proper employment, and a very strong police force that will stop the infiltration of enemies of any of the neighboring countries. Palestinians must live in peace with the rest of the world. They cannot allow autocracies to control their country. Autocracies always wage war, and they want to expand. The Israeli military is one of the strongest in the world, and their country will not go down without defending themselves. The two countries must learn to coexist. That is what God wants. They have not been able to do this for thousands of years. Something must change drastically. The understanding of love as a commandment and coexistence as a commandment for the Islamic faith, the Christian faith, and the Jewish faith. That must all be understood because before any real progress would be possibly made.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your insights with all of us on this very sad situation. Would each of you like to make a closing statement?
Moses. I want to thank all of you for allowing me to return. I led the Israelites to what is now an area of great dispute. I must admit that we fought our wars. I passed just as we were arriving at the country, at the promised land. But those that came after me were threatened. Animosities increased. And both sides did things that would build the animosities between all of the parties. There were great differences between the Jewish tribes and the Arabic tribes. There were great differences in their religious thought, great differences in the way that they created trade, that they farmed, that they raised their food supplies, that they worshiped their gods. Today, there are still many, many, many challenges. The hatreds are only growing now through this terrible war. The Palestinians must find a way to live peacefully and coexist with their neighbors. The Jewish country must learn to live peacefully with their neighbors and coexist as well. The world community must help, and the Palestinian community must be rebuilt. So thank you for allowing me to bring you my thoughts. Things have changed much through the years, but sadly some things have remained the same. Arafat. I thought that the only way that the Palestinians could gain independence was through force. That obviously will never ever work. The Israeli government is backed by the democracies of the world. Their country has many enemies in the area, but they have the incredibly strong military, and they have the ability to resist the violent hatreds that are shown towards them. In many instances, as I watch from here, I realize the uselessness of the United Nations. They're more satisfied with gaining wealth and powers for themselves and their countries. But the United Nations has to take an active role. They have to create a buffer, and they have to educate the Palestinians. And the educational system has got to remove the hatred. It is only through teaching the young that it will be possible sometime in the future for the country of Palestine and Israel to exist and to actually get along. David. I also want to thank you for allowing me to speak. When I ruled, things were so much different, but in certain areas, things were so similar. There were many hatreds towards us. I did the best I could to maintain military strength and to assure that the Jewish culture existed among all of the enemies. Today, much the same thing exists. The current war is going to have huge repercussions far into the future. The only way that coexistence is going to take place is if the other countries of the world step in, create buffers, allow the Palestinian people to prosper on their own, and avoid any dependence upon countries such as Iran. So thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I appreciate it, and I hope that in the future the countries will truly understand. Okay, thank you so much, guys. That was very, very interesting. Connie and I have started a new podcast called Hello Heaven. We broadcast it on YouTube and Facebook Live Fridays at 6 p.m. Pacific Time. The audio is available on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Alexa, and Google. I would remind you that my 10th book, Modern Messages of the Archangels, is available for purchase. Personalized copies are only available on my website. I channel 20 different archangels in this book. It is a book of peace. It is a book of love. It is a book that is possible to change your life. Tell your friends about it. I think that they will truly find comfort in it.
I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight on Channeling History. We always try to bring you the truth about history because by speaking to the souls that lived the events, they can help us avoid mistakes in the future. So, God bless you all. Have a great week.
All right. I'd like to thank everybody that tunes into our show. It's actually becoming quite challenging. We've been doing this now for almost 4 years. And I'm having problems coming up with ideas. I thought tonight was spectacular, but I had to work very hard to come up with it. And I know the guides were helping me. You can feel free to email me suggestions. I would appreciate that. I try to bring out subject matter that is of interest to everyone. As you know, if you do not learn your history, you will certainly repeat the mistakes of the past. So all of our shows are available on YouTube. It's in my name, Barry Strohm. You can also watch it on Podbeam. Just search for Channeling History. All our shows are available there. Connie and I hope that you thoroughly enjoyed our show tonight. We thank you for listening. And please join us on Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the ParaX Radio Network.
Thanks for listening to Channeling History. Tune in again next week for another electrifying episode, as we never know who will make an appearance or who will come through the portal. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2020. Our Story Begins by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.